right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for getting on this Zoom call with me this evening. Certainly appreciate it. This last minute call. We sent this invitation out to our PTSA members here at Wade Hampton and all of our Booster Club members. I'm going to be recording this meeting and I'll be sharing it with all parents in our newsletter so they'll have the same general information that I'm going to present tonight. Before I get into this conversation about budget, I have to do a shameless plug for three important things coming up. Number one, graduation is next Tuesday. If you have a graduating senior, please make sure you're reading all that information because we anticipate a lot of traffic on Tuesday morning with the construction down there at Church Bridge Road. And we're the first ones up. We're the first high school to graduate in Greenville County this year, and we're going to set the tone. We're going to literally be leading like generals. So please make sure you read that information. And then coinciding with graduation, that day is also our academic enrichment day for all of our 9th through 11th grade students, meaning that we're giving them permission to do something else productive and enriching that day in lieu of coming to the building in coming to the building that day, because the majority of our staff members will be at Bon Secours for the graduation. So they have a process for them to go do volunteer hours or to do something else enriching, maybe job shadowing, visiting a college, or something else productive that particular day. And we'll give them an excuse. They'll be marked present that day as long as they bring back their reflection form the very next day. For some families, they don't really care if they're absent or not because we are past seat time recovery deadline anyway. So just take that as an FYI for you. Students are more than welcome to come that morning. It just means they're going to be more centralized in the cafeteria and inside the auditorium, which means it may not be as fun, as engaging as a traditional day might be. So just kind of take that at face value. And then the third thing is that because we're going to final exams, and then next Wednesday, after our last final exam, third block, we're going to be using the fourth block time frame for our what we call peace out party. It is the last full day of school that day. And so at fourth block on next Wednesday, we're going to be down in the cafeteria, the field outside, the gym, having just a tremendous high school version of a field day. Games and food and drinks and all kind of things going on. Ice cream truck, just all kind of fun things happening that day. And what we're asking from parents is they might be to donate soda or water bottles, or water rather, individual water and sodas to help us keep our costs down. We're going to purchase food and all that kind of stuff in the games, but if you're inclined and kind enough to donate some soda and water, we would so appreciate it. You can just bring them into the front office and they'll take and deliver those to the proper locations. All right, those are my shameless plugs. Let's get into today's meeting. How we're going to facilitate today is we're going to go through a series of slides that we have prepared for everyone here. Allison is my classroom aide. When I get to a point, I may stop along the way and just ask if there's any questions. She's going to monitor the chat for me because I'm not going to be able to see the chat from my screen where I'm presenting from today. The slides what I'm going to go through tonight are the same slides that every principal in Greenville County is using. Matter of fact, some of this information, if you've been paying attention to the board meetings, or some similar information. There's been some updates as of today because we had to go through and change some slides today as well. So things are always constantly moving. My goal for today is to give you as much factual information as possible, and then at the end of the night, tell you what are the possible next steps for us going forward. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this conversation around funding and budgeting going forward. If I can find my next button here. Here we go. Maybe not. Here we go. So first thing is we want to talk to you about some of the challenges facing public school funding here in South Carolina. We're going to delineate between state funding and local funding, and we're going to talk about what GCS is recommending and how you as a parent can get involved in that. Let's first start off with the big picture, all right? The big picture is that our Board of Trustees continue to balance the need to provide teacher raises to stay competitive. We know that we have to keep a well-quality staff here in Greenville County to do the work that we're doing. And so we have to stay competitive across the board, and that impacts taxpayers. The funding for traditional public schools is facing an increasing challenge at the state and local level. And as we always know, resources are decreasing along the way. But in spite of these challenges, the district's recommendation for this year is that we have no millage increases while still offering a balanced budget that includes teacher and staff raises. That's going to be a priority for our school district and our board of trustees. And so Greenville County Schools is academically successful and we are financially responsible. I'm going to show you several slides that will prove that point going forward. First off, we rank 8 out of 72 districts in the state. You see our graduation rate at 88.7%, which is the highest we've ever been. The last class of 2027, you see how much money they've earned as a graduating class. Over $168 million in college scholarships, with over 37,000 potential college credits to dual enrollment, and over 12,000 industry certifications. That's great success for a district of our size. Now, for our fiscal responsibility, we have been confirmed annually by external audits. We have the highest credit ratings possible for a district. We have more fiscally efficient than any other district. I'm going to show you some data around that. We are the 8th lowest per pupil expenditure cost in South Carolina, and we have the lowest district level administrative cost in South Carolina, which is less than 1%. And we're not just saying this, we're going to show you the specific data that references that. Here's an example. Now, there's a lot of information on this slide, and it relates to academic outcomes and financial spending across the state. Now, first thing you need to know is that because we're Greenville County, there's no other district like us in the state. And what we mean by like us, we're talking about student enrollment and the sheer size. We're the largest district in the state with over 78,000 students. And so there's no other district that we can compare ourselves to when it comes to that number. And so our finance department created these 4 hypothetical large districts in the state. And the way they did that, they did it based on geographically connected independent districts that would have a total population rough to ours. Now, there's a key at the bottom down here that you can see that gives you that. For example, the Southeast District is Charleston, Dorchester 2, Dorchester 4. Those districts combine roughly 78,128 students, and then so forth, so on. There's a North District, a Central, and Upstate. Now, just to be clear, there's no such thing in South Carolina as the Southeast, North, Central, and Upstate districts. This is a hypothetical if we were to combine those districts is what we're talking about here. But in any case, the finance department did this in order for us to take note in how we budget. I'll give you a moment to look at that slide so you can notice that our total budget, which is at the top, is smaller than all of the other 4 hypothetical districts that's there. All right, give you a moment to look at that for a second. There's a lot on this screen. You'll notice that our academic ranking is also the highest, right? Our academic ranking is number 8 in the state. And when you look at those other combined districts like Southeast, North, Central, and Upstate, you'll see their combined rankings. You'll also notice that we have our poverty index is the 3rd highest out of the 5. Our poverty index indicates people who are living in poverty, right? So our poverty index is 57, 3rd highest among these hypotheticals. You'll also notice that the district and program management cost for our district is half of the next closest hypothetical school district and a quarter of the highest one. Right? All this means that the big takeaway from this is that our district is financially responsible and efficient. It means we're doing more with actually less. I want to show you another table that's similar to this, and I'm going to leave it here for a quick second so you can look at that. And what we're looking at here, as previously mentioned, we're ranked number 8th in the state academically out of 72 school districts here in the state. This chart that you're looking at combines the 7 districts that outperform us, right? So we're number 8. There's 7 others that are outperforming us. Now, due to the discrepancy in total number of students, right, like I said before, there's no other district singly that is like us in student population. And so to compare, we have to look at per pupil expenditure. So how much are we spending per pupil? And when you look at this, you will see that, excuse me, due to the discrepancy in the total number of students, the chart highlights per pupil expenditures for every direct comparison, which is only meaningful comparison to individual districts. Now look at the per pupil expenditure column for Greenville County, and then look at the other 7. And then what you'll see is that we're spending less per pupil than the other top 7 that are outperforming us. Greenville County schools achieves better academic results than all, but 7 districts above the entire state. Once again, the takeaway is that we're doing more with less based on per pupil expenditure spending. This data and information is going to be very important as we get to the next stage of this conversation when we talk about how the board is budgeting, setting the budget for the fiscal year, and how we go about making plans and based on revenue. I'm going to pause right here, Allison, and see if there's any questions in the chat for us right now.
Not so far.
All right, sounds good. Allison, you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much. Let's talk about some of our challenges. Now, this number one challenge, and in each one of these challenges, we're going to talk about how this unpacks. So this is the larger vision of our challenges. The state is actually imposing new unfunded or underfunded mandates on districts. And we're going to talk about what they are. We have decreasing new funding for traditional public schools, and there's increasing new funding for charter schools, and be more specifically, public charter schools. Now, the state has proposed some resolutions to address this inequity that's going to be considered, and we'll unpack that a little bit later. Now, that's at the state level. At the local level, county council is considering reducing the single area of the district's funding over which they have control. And there's currently a proposed bill to move approval of the district's budget from the school board to county council. So those are our current challenges as we see them today. Now, based on a formula from the state, the split for funding districts is roughly 75% come from the state, and the other 25% comes from local taxes. All right. Now, I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to talk about property taxes and millage in a second. But remember this formula: 75% of our district's funding come from the state, and 25% comes from local. Now, there are several issues that we need to talk about. All right. First is that the state is not fully funding teacher raises and other mandates for school districts. That's the first issue. And we're going to unpack this issue right now. There's a myth about state funding teacher raises. Dr. Royce speaks about this often. The state is not sending any school district, not just Greenville County, they are not sending any district in the South Carolina $1,500 for each teacher. That's a myth that exists, and we want to make sure we're clear about that. Let's look at, here's an example. Step increases are actually mandated by the state. And what we mean by step increases is that there is a state schedule for teacher compensation, and it is mandated by law that districts have step increases. For Greenville County, teachers for fiscal year 26 with no raise would cost us $6.8 million. Teacher certification upgrades, when teachers get upgrades in their certificates and new credentials, which are mandated by the state, that will cost us an additional $1.3 million. The proposed state increase of $1,500 for every Greenville County teacher would cost another additional $11 million. Well, you'll see that the allocation to Greenville County in new state dollars is just $3.75 million. That's a funding deficit of $15.448 million. I'll leave that there just so you can kind of take that part in. And this is why we mean there's a myth related to the state funding for teacher raises. Now, issue number 2 is that the state is increasing new funding to charter schools while decreasing funding to public schools. That's issue number 2. And you can see in this chart that the overall amount that the state is funding through state aid, that's what it's called, state aid, to classrooms is decreasing annually. That's that top column, the new state funding. You'll see it's decreasing annually, and that's to the entire state. Within that decreasing amount, they are increasing funding to charter school districts and sending less money to public schools. And so in this example, you will see that in fiscal year 24, charter school students receive 5.86% of the funding went to charter schools, as opposed to 7.49% of students in fiscal year 26. When you look at the comparison between traditional and charter, you'll see that breakdown of the discrepancy that we see there. There's another way we can look at that. For 25-26 school year, the state has proposed for a budget that of $125 million in new state funding through the state aid classroom. All right, you can see here that 90 million of that will go to charter school districts that serve approximately 57,000 students across the state. And you'll see that $22 million of that budget will go to traditional public school students, which serve more than 700,000 students. Now we have in this district, let me pause. Anybody know how many students we have in Greenville County?
70-something thousand, correct?
78,000 students. Yep, 78,000 students are in Greenville County. And so you can do the math. There's 57,000 students in all of the charter school districts in the entire state, and they're slated to receive 80% of that classroom, classroom funding, while 20% is slated to go to the remaining 92.5% of the students in the state. The allocation for Greenville County is $3.75 million. All right. I think I saw a question come up. What's the question there?
Sorry, is this new or existing funding?
This is new funding. All right. Let's look at it a different way. Another way to look at this is that the state will provide approximately $880, excuse me, per charter student and roughly $85 per traditional public school student. You can see that in this chart that the amount provided by the state is decreasing overall, but the gap between charter and traditional schools is growing to the point that charter school students will receive more than 10 times the new funding of a traditional public school student. Now, Dr. Royster has made it very, very clear that we're not saying that charter schools should not receive state funding, but we're deeply concerned with how the disparity, and that's the key word there, is growing, and the long-term impact that will have on our particular students. So I'll leave this here just for a moment for you to grasp those numbers and to take that part in and then see it. I think a question just popped up just now. And while I'm doing that, this is based on average daily membership. And that's what our acronym you see, ADM, mean average daily membership. What were the questions that came up?
The first one is, why is there such a large gap?
Yeah, so the gap results in the funding choices between charter and traditional. And so that's the best way I can explain it. The numbers that you'll see here is based on the enrollment of the 135th day of school. And so when they take our data from Power School, they're looking at that particular data. They're looking at enrollment on the 135th day of school.
And then the second question said, just to clarify, this reflects the entire funding picture of funding annually?
Yes, of new money coming in. That is correct. This is the new state funding per pupil for both public charter schools and traditional public schools. That is correct.
That's all.
All right. Let's look at some proposed legislative solutions. Principals met with Dr. Royster on last week, and he made mention of meeting with or having Representative Bruce Bannister, who is the South Carolina House Representative for the 24th District, really heard our concerns. And so he, along with several other legislators, got together and they proposed these potential temporary and maybe more permanent solutions to this particular situation. There's currently an amended proviso 1.3 that has that has already passed the House that could assist us in closing our funding gap and will be part of the considerations for the final funding approval. You'll see an overall of these here. So the temporary partial solution is that to adjust the virtual charter school weighting from the current 0.65 to 0.35 to temporarily mitigate the disproportionate distribution of state aid funding that is negatively impacting traditional school districts. That's a temporary proviso. That's currently passed the House, and now it's going across the hall to the Senate for them to review. Now, there's a more permanent solution that they've also added to the new proviso, which is to establish an education stakeholder task force made up of representatives from traditional school districts and charter school authorizers. And that task force would study the current state aid formula and recommend revisions to ensure a more equitable distribution. So those are two that's currently in discussion right now. Now, let's talk about issue number 3. This is the third issue. Residents, remember earlier that the state says it should provide 75% of our funding, and then the remaining should come from local. Let's look at local funding. There's some very common and understandably misconceptions about local taxes, including that residents are not paying for school districts' operating expenses based on their primary homes. Taxpayers often think, rightfully so, that more of their taxes go to school districts than they really do, because the credit isn't clearly shown on the bill. I'm going to show you an example of that. And if you have a copy of your bill, maybe you can pull it out and look at it. Here's an example of one. We've obviously redacted some names so you can identify who this individual might be. But you'll notice, pay close attention to this slide, because it's something that we've all probably seen. And most people do not understand it because it shows in a way that is really misleading, to tell you the honest truth. Taxpayers are often understandably confused by their tax bill. Taxes on your primary home do not go towards school district operations. There is in place of that, there's what they call a credit on your tax bill for that. So that while it may appear that approximately 60% of that go to school districts, it's actually much lower, typically 15 to 30%. So for example, on this slide, you see the highlighted under allocation of tax money, Greenville County Schools, and you see an amount that's there. That amount, $2,651, is actually 15 to 30% of what your property tax actually would have been coming to the district. Now, that 65% is the breakdown of how much of that allocated money is going to the district. It doesn't mean that 65% of your property tax is coming to the school district. It's a misleading way of looking at your tax bill, and we want to make sure people knew how to read that. I'm going to pause right there and see if there's any questions and or comments about that. I will tell you, I didn't know that for myself. I had to go back and look at my tax bill.
I pulled my tax bill out this morning and it reflects the exact same as this. I was very surprised.
Right. All right. Let's look at issue number 4. People think the district raises millage for taxes every year and at the maximum amount, but that is not true. That part is not true. Let's talk about millage. Millage is defined or used to determine the amount of local taxes paid. Now, the state has a formula for recommending how much millage a local school district should be able to use to account for population growth. This year, in the first reading of the budget, which is on May 5th, Greenville County Schools did not recommend a millage increase. And this is the 4th time in 11 years that we have not recommended a millage increase. In the last 16 years, it has never used the full amount available. For example, in fiscal year 25, that's where we are right now, the district used 1.5 mills, but they had 35.5 available, leaving 34 mills unused. Let's talk about issue number 5. Now, the Greenville County Administrator has proposed to County Council that they take away existing and future local tax revenue from the school district through something called feedlots. Now, before I show you the answer to feedlots, is there anybody who knows what feedlot means? If you do, I've got some nice Wade Hampton gear. You're not allowed to Google it.
I know because I've heard it a lot today. It's fee in lieu of taxes.
There you go. FELOTS means fee in lieu of taxes. Now, currently, uh, this is another source of local tax revenue for the district. And these are used by county council for economic development when they're trying to recruit new businesses to the area. That's how we use FELOTS. And currently, the entries listed on your tax bill receive revenues from FELOTS based on percentage of what they receive in overall local taxes. And so some examples of that, depending on where you live in the county, maybe county council, it may be Greenville County Schools, maybe a fire district, sanitation, library, art museum, arena district. It all depends on where you are, but these are called fee in lieu of taxes. So when you look at your tax bill, you can kind of see how many feedlots are there for, my primary resident. Greenville County has multiple feedlot agreements in place to promote economic development in our community. Traditionally in our county, the fees have been split among all taxing entities in accordance with each entity's millage rate as a percentage of all millage in the county. For example, Greenville County Schools has been receiving approximately 39% for operating purposes of the total feedlot payments received each fiscal year, which currently is about $25.5 million in general fund revenue annually. And so that split is determined solely by county council. They determine that of the feedlots is coming into the district. All right. The county administrator is proposing an increase in their share of feedlots. They're proposing 31% to 62%, which will decrease the portion going to the school district and to other entities. The county has also stated that this will enable them to pave an additional 20 miles of roadway at an average cost of about $850,000 per mile and create a 1.5 mil decrease from the county or through the county. Now, for our school district, this means a decrease of $10.4 million in revenue, which is more than the amount the district has allocated for teacher raises this year. That's why this is important to know. Issue number 6 is that there is a bill proposed in the legislature to move the authority to county council to approve the school district's final budget. And that legislative bill is called House Bill 4397. Now, give me a moment because I want to read some information to you that's not on this screen. Several state legislatures from Greenville has introduced a bill that would shift final approval of school district budget from the locally elected Board of Education. They want to shift that control of the school district's $1.3 billion budget from a nonpartisan education-focused board to a partisan board that manages a much smaller $300 million budget. And this partisan body has no direct expertise or mandate in educational governance. Now, this legislation sets a very dangerous precedent, and it risks creating a decision and outcomes which could lead to avoiding accountability. If the federal and state governments fully funded the mandates they imposed on school districts, the need for local tax increases would likely be unnecessary. And with the rise in enrollment, increased costs, and urgent staffing needs, this bill would hamper the district's ability to respond to the needs of over 78,000 students and their families, 12,000 employees, and our community's future workforce efforts. Now, Greenville County Council has never, ever approved the district's budget. And it is highly uncommon to require a district to have approval of its entire budget by a county council. Given the most recent proposal by the county administrator, they have clearly demonstrated a willingness to move funding away from schools to fund other local services. And what we're doing is we are urging lawmakers and the community to reject this bill. We believe that budget decisions must reflect student needs, not political agendas. We're here to serve students and not political agendas. And so we are urging for this to be rejected. Now, while it's too late for this year for this bill to pass, right? This bill can't pass this year. It could be enacted next year. And so we want to get in front of this and give you that information on the front end about that. So now what are we recommending? What is Greenville County Schools recommending with all of these issues that we're put in front of you just now? First and foremost, we recognize that inflation and the current overall economic conditions are affecting our employees as well as taxpayers. Many of them are here with us. They're our employees, they're our teachers, they are here. And so we do not recommend any increase in the millage rate once again. And once again, like I said before, this will be the fourth time in 11 years that Greenville County Schools has not raised millage. We had a first reading on May 5. And so if the administration had to make a recommendation as of May 5th, it would be to have a step movement with an increase to each step by $1,050 for teachers, the addition of a 37th step, and a step increase of 2% increase for all employees, or which is greater. That's one of our recommendations. And if the unfunded mandate extending paid parental leave from 6 weeks to 12 is removed from the state budget, we will likely be able to increase the teacher pay raise to $1,250 and still maintain the 2% increase for all employees with that no millage increase. If the allocation of new funding that we talked about earlier, that new state aid to classrooms, if that is adjusted to address the inequities between traditional and charter school districts, then it is very possible that we could be able to recommend a $1,400 teacher pay increase, as well as a 2.4% increase for all employees. Once again, with no change in the millage rate. And we believe that the revenue picture will be more solidified in the next week or two, or the next week. Actually, in the next week, it should be more solidified as we move forward. But this is what we're recommending, or what we see in the future as of that first reading on May 5. Now, this is the new information that we had to get updated just today, right? Last week, one day after the Greenville County School Board held the first two required readings of our budget, and 3 weeks before its scheduled final approval, there was a meeting of the Greenville County Council's Committee of the Whole. And at this May 6th meeting, it was put forward by the county administrator for the council to consider changing the distribution in fee lot payments, not just going forward, but including current fee agreements in place. And so based on specific information obtained from county, we understand this will remove, once again, $10.4 million from our general fund revenue for fiscal year 26 and future years. Now, it was stated this reallocation of fee lot monies will help fund additional road pavements at a cost of $850 per mile and a 1.5 mil tax reduction from the county government. But just as a reminder, unlike the school district, the county receives property tax revenues of owner-occupied homes. We talked earlier that the district does not receive that full property tax amount. The county council does receive that. And so as a result, a mill to the county has a revenue value of about $2.94 million, where the same single mill value approximately for Greenville County will be much less at $1.7 million to Greenville County Schools. In accordance with state law, so long as some amount is distributed to Greenville County and the other local tax entities, it is very possible for county council to remove all but a symbolic amount of the total $25 million currently received by the district as a local fee in lieu of revenue. And if this change is approved by county council, the resulting last-minute hole in our budget will currently change the recommended paths that we put before you tonight and at the recommendation at the first reading that took place on May 5th. And so let me end or sum this up with what our challenges were and what you can do. The challenges, once again, is that the state is imposing new unfunded or underfunded mandates on districts across the state, decreasing new funding for traditional public schools while increasing new funding for charter schools. County council is considering reducing the single area of the district's funding over which they have control. And there's a proposed bill to move approval of the district's budget from the school board to county council. So those are the challenges, the primary 5 challenges put before you. If you wish to express an opinion, here's what you can do. There's state funding education. You can contact your state representative or senator. If questions about fee lots and tax abatements and tax billing, you contact your county city member. And for Greenville County recommended budget, you contact your school board trustees. In the slide deck that I'm going to send out to parents, you'll be able to click on these links and you can look and find out where your elected officials are based on where you live. If you live in the county or some other county in the state, it can show you exactly who these individuals are and their contact information going forward. Now, I saw a question pop up in the pop up. What was the question, Allison?
If it's passed, in order to make up the shortfall, will there be extreme cuts to athletic funding?
That's a very good question. Whoever asked that, the answer that I have for you is I don't know. I just know that the ability for us to do the recommendation for teacher increases and to be able to, it will definitely impact our operational cost. And athletics is a part of that, but the athletics is another subset of the general budget that that the district would have to figure out. But I imagine there'll be some impact there some way. To what degree, I just don't know right now at this very moment. If you have questions, just like myself, I'm putting forth questions to the district and they'll follow with me as needed. When I meet with my staff on tomorrow, my teachers and staff will have questions. We'll formulate those things and send them up to the proper chain of command. And I urge and recommend that you as parents, if you have concerns about what you have there, whichever way that you have here, you know who your representatives are. I'll put the screen back up one more time so you can see, like, which area should I focus my efforts towards? Is it state funding? Is it the feedlots? Is it the general budget for the school district? So once again, if it's school district, contact your school board trustees. For feedlots, which is local taxation, local monies, that's your county council member. And then for state funding, that's your state representative and your state senator. Okay. I will unshare my screen, and then I will see. I want to thank everyone for showing up today and being present for this conversation. Once again, I will continue to communicate with you by sending this recording out along with the slide deck once we've had the opportunity to talk with our entire staff. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I'm going to stop the recording.